last meeting. I've read them over, and I motion to approve the minutes as
I'll second.
sent. Great. Great. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Great, I got a unanimous vote there. So let's talk about our goals. First, there's no update for me on incentives. Well, I don't know if there's any update on incentives. Was it Brian who's going to look at?
I took a look at it.
You took a look at
It
it.
looks like over 2 years ago,
Okay.
right before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So, and do you think it's something, having looked at it, is it something that we need to do anything with more, or do you think it looks, wow, good to go, and we should be just talking about it and then going
Well,
back to the Board of Selectmen?
I mean, I think just reading through it,
Mhm.
there's some things I would want to clarify a little more.
Okay.
It just seems like exactly who and what would be eligible for the abatements. I have a feeling like we could maybe make that a little simpler,
Okay.
a little clearer. And my thing is like, how do we connect this back to tax revenue at some point in the future, right?
The information was sent to all of us, right? Or was it just?
I had reached out. I just reached out for it, and I think to both of you, and then I think you got copied on it. I don't
Okay.
know if the whole.
But I've all circulated around to
The
everybody.
reason I'm thinking is that maybe for next month, if we could all take a look at it, and then we'll just make it a discussion topic and hear
Yeah.
what
Is this
Scott's.
the program, Cleo, that you worked on with Toby?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
so some of us should be familiar with it, unless,
Oh, great.
yeah.
Yeah, right, that would
So
make
it'll be a
sense.
refresher for some.
And I'll be learning for me, because
Yeah.
I'll read it now, and then we'll plan on discussing it to see, especially if Scott thought there were some things that we might want to tweak.
Yeah,
So-
tweaking, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, really, just kind of connecting it back to true growth in tax revenue,
Mhm.
right? Be
Great.
it a new business or an investment. Like, there's some things there. I think maybe if we clarify it a little more.
Okay.
Did it ever have a go-round at the Board of Selectmen, or we never got that far?
We presented it and.
I think that was in February that it was presented.
And then
I feel like it was,
Right before
yeah.
Okay.
the pandemic hit.
So it
yeah.
was never really discussed at the Selectmen level, so we don't know if it had legs or didn't have legs. So we'll start again, that's good.
Yeah.
They heard it, but I don't think there was any reaction. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe we'll make it more actionable this time
Yeah.
by saying,
Absolutely.
here's what we want to do.
Yes.
You know, can we go ahead unless you say no?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, that's great.
Okay, great. So we'll definitely talk about that next time, and especially if Betsy's going to share with everybody in advance, so we can read it over.
I think it might be helpful, probably helpful for me to get some grounding in how, like, in tax assessments, right, and what really drives property tax versus real estate tax, right? Like, those are the two main things there. How often are how often do the assessments take place, right? So I don't know who.
So that would be our assessor, and she's in training this week, but you can
Okay.
just reach out to her, or I can
Okay.
set up a time for you to talk with her.
Okay.
But the really high level basic answer is that it's assessed, everything is assessed yearly.
Yearly. Okay.
So just like your home, she does inspections, probably not yearly, but somewhat often. And then for personal property, I believe it's up to the business owner to declare, and there's a depreciation schedule.
Yep.
So I think maybe the assumption is or maybe it depends on the type of property you have, but it depreciates by a certain percentage every year.
Yeah, that I'm very familiar with. And
Yeah.
it's across all the towns. It's a very similar format in terms of how that takes place. Okay.
Great. With respect to part 2 of that first one, zoning, I still haven't heard anything from Mr. Cleve, right? So.
Yeah, and I just left him a voicemail before this meeting started.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're still working on that. Because just to remind everybody, Betsy had said that she thought that TPZ was actually cleaning up their zoning. They were actually having somebody go through and making changes. So this would be an opportunity to ask, what are they doing with business district zonings? So that was what we're waiting for there. There's nothing on signage and wayfinding,
Well,
or is there?
there is a grant that I'm exploring
Oh,
that assuming all goes according to plan, we would be able to pay for and install the Welcome to Woodward signs at the border.
All of them?
All of them.
Wow.
And potentially additional signage throughout town. That's not really EDC related, but that it would all be taken care of with one grant and it would all have a similar look and feel.
Oh,
That's
wow.
amazing.
That's
So I don't-
great.
You know, I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm still in the exploration stage, but I'm looking into that.
Oh, that's really exciting. That'd
it
be
is.
great news.
That's super exciting. 'Cause what did we say? There was about 8 town crossing lines?
I think it's closer to 11.
11?
Like maybe 10 or 11. And then there's, you know, the signage, the kind of second tier signage that says, you know, sports complex this way, town
Right,
hall
right,
that
right.
way.
Maybe something off the Merritt Parkway
Mhm.
or something like that, yeah. Nice.
Well, great. We look forward to hearing more about that. That's good news.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So our next item is business district events and networking. So, events we just had.
Yeah, so how did the happy hour go?
It went well. It was it sparser attended than? Crest?
I missed the beginning.
Okay, there were more people in the beginning, and by the at the second hour it plummeted in people being there.
What time did it start again?
It was 5 to 7.
Okay,
So like around 5:30 was its peak.
right.
There was a good turnout for the one between Lincoln and NIPCO in the fall.
Yes, there was.
I think that was also an outside.
And it was outside,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't attend the line because I.
You didn't want to be inside a building. I understand.
Yeah.
That's. I wondered about that. I
Yeah.
wondered if that was
Yeah.
going
Well,
to
it's
be.
inside, but also that it's unmasked because you're drinking.
Yeah. So it's a double.
And I was just happened to be extra cautious then because I didn't want to miss my daughter's college graduation, so I kind of kept to
Absolutely.
myself for a little while, not to
Yep.
jeopardize that. But it is interesting how you said there was a decent turnout at 5 and then it petered out. So
Yes.
that's kind of telling that 5 o'clock is a good time and maybe it is just an hour and a half. We could shorten it up.
Yep. That's true too.
People can hit it after work and then they want to head home for dinner.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And then we also probably want to talk about. Well, I guess that would be next, the gift cards thing, right? Is there anything more on?
Well, we've got Make
Events.
Music
Oh, we've
Day
got
coming
Make-
up.
yeah.
So that's on June 21st, so it's a Tuesday.
Yep.
And we've got 6 locations signed up now. So we've got 10 Selden, Coachman Square, Crest, the Linden, 245, and the Willows. And I've got bands lined up for everybody except the Willows. I'm still working with 10 Selden to find a musician for that spot. And then everybody is doing something in addition. So Coachman is doing a health fair, and they've got a food truck coming. 245 is doing a lot of stuff. They have a fitness boot camp. They've got sidewalk sales. They've got the Cafe Rebelde food truck, and an art show. Down the street at the Willows, they're doing a happy hour in addition to whoever we get lined up for their music. Crest also has an art show going on. 10 Selden is going to do a sidewalk sale. And the Linden just happens to be doing Make Music Day at approximately the same time as everything else. So they're sort of, physically removed from this so that they're not doing anything in addition. Excuse me.
And are all the other ancillary events being advertised, or how do you wrap your head around all of that?
Yeah, so I'm just waiting to plug in the hole about the Willows, and then I've got a flyer that I'm going to put out, and I'm going to ask all of the participants to also circulate the flyer.
Yeah.
But I've been doing sort of a save the date thing until I have that
I've
last
seen that.
detail.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great.
That's great.
So
That's
it sounds
really
like I think it'll be a really nice family event, and hopefully some commuters will stick around and hang out and maybe eat dinner.
What day of the week is it again?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday the 21st. That sounds good.
And it's from 5 to 7.
Super. That's great.
But going back to events, do we want to talk now about a fall event, or is that
We
something
could.
we want to do quarterly or twice a year? Whether it's a happy hour or some type of programming content? I don't know. I mean, we did a breakfast years ago. Some people like that. You never know with people's schedules.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't feel like we found the right timing that works. I mean, we're never gonna find something that works for everybody, but I don't really know what the best time is. I was just at a networking event the other day, and somebody in North Branford was telling me that he does a quarterly event. Maybe it's only 3 times a year, where they have a big speaker come in. So they've had the DECD commissioner from the state come down and give a talk. They've got the CEO of the Regional Water Authority coming in to kind of talk about what their long-term plans are for the region. And then they do, like, drinks and finger food, and they have it, I don't know if he has it catered, but he gets a sponsor to pay for whatever the costs are. And and North Branford is probably about the size of Woodbridge, maybe a little smaller, and they usually get about 100 people to come to these events.
Wow.
Impressive.
Yeah,
That
it's a
is.
lot of people for a very
That's-
small
that's
town.
community building, not just
Well,
business
exactly.
building, yeah.
An idea that I think Brian mentioned to me, which sounded interesting, is us for the EDC doing something at town events, like maybe even having an EDC presence and I don't know, a booth, but something to kind of encourage
Input.
from people in town around EDC issues. So that might be something we'd do. Like at one of the more popular town events.
Is
He wanted-
there a tabling event at one of the concerts this year? Sometimes they turn one of the Tuesday concerts into a,
I'll have to ask about that. I know we've had EDC tables at the concerts before, and it's,
Not
no, I mean,
Okay.
people are there.
for the concert.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So
But
maybe it's
there's another opportunity where
Yeah.
it makes more sense.
yeah. Well, maybe if you keep everybody keep thinking about it. If there is an event that you think would be more meaningful for that, willing to do it.
I'm sorry, but that's not Debbie. Do you guys want to try to do something, another happy hour? Do you want to try to do a different networking style event?
Are you talking about like for fall, like you said, like a September thing?
yeah, I mean, I think summer's tough and it's
Yeah.
already June.
Or
to
even
July.
August, right before Labor Day. Everybody's back and
Maybe. I don't know. There's always two schools of thought. I mean, no pun intended with school, that the end of August, everybody goes away, or the end of August, everybody's back and getting ready for school. I think it might depend on your age range and stage of life, right? We've often talked about that too. August is tough.
Yeah, that's usually. That's the only time I can actually drive the Merit and it's not full. Is August. Yeah. I'd probably lean toward post Labor Day, but if
Yeah.
we're going to do something,
Yeah,
just
I agree.
Yeah, I think we should. And post Labor Day, we probably could still, who knows where we're going to be, but we could still do something outdoors.
absolutely if it's
And that
early.
appears to
Yeah.
have been a little more effective.
So why don't we all think about what would be a good choice for something like that?
Yeah, we could take a look at the calendar and see when the holidays fall, and
Yeah.
obviously we don't have darkness issues.
Right.
I think that's a good time of year.
It would be. Great. Should I go on to gift cards?
Yeah.
So Betsy sent 2 images for us to look at, right? They both look good to me, actually. Did you guys get to see these?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just printed them so I could remind myself. And so you're asking for feedback. I think they both look really good. So,
Okay. Yeah, I just have to come up with a design. Obviously, there's no physical card because it's
Yeah.
an e-card.
Right.
But they had it designed to look like a card, so I kind of ran into a roadblock. I didn't want to just make the decision for all of you.
So would this be an image on the e-gift card?
Yeah, so when you get
Okay.
the email,
Right.
it's sort of the design.
Yeah.
When you visit the landing page,
Mhm.
it's prominently featured.
I'll call this one A
Okay?
and this one B. Show of hands, who likes A better? Oh God, we're gonna be split, aren't we?
I'm abstaining because I kind of made the logos.
But your opinion matters because you're so visual.
And you got,
I like the font on A.
there's something
It's
about
just-
A that grabbed me, and also it's lighter.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm being, but we have to choose one, don't we?
Yeah,
Yes.
or I could modify it if that's.
Robert, can we pass it around just real quick?
Absolutely.
And have you while people are looking at that, have you had any interaction with Raquel?
Yes, so
Okay.
she's very helpful.
Good.
So she's reached out to me a couple times just to kind of check in and see.
She's, I mean, she was very receptive and was staying in communication with me, so.
Yeah, and she's got some tips and tricks that I haven't even looked into
Okay.
yet. But I think once we have this, I'll have the page set up, and then I can start talking to businesses about it. But I don't want to talk to businesses until we have something for them
Right.
To show,
look at.
to say, hey,
Right.
Yeah,
So I sent an e-newsletter out to the businesses earlier this week, and I just kind of teased that this was coming and,
Mhm.
details to come. So, maybe in the next couple weeks, I can send something out with more detail and start seeing who
Great.
would like to participate.
I think I like this side by side.
Yeah.
so you're on A now?
What do you think, Betsy?
So,
I like
You
T.
made 'em,
I
so-
like this one better also.
oh, well,
Okay.
then that's the one.
Yeah.
We've made a decision. Wonderful. Great. Board and commission communications, I don't think there's any, because we were at the 2030, but we've had a meeting since then, right?
No.
No? Oh,
We had the 2030, and then like the next night was
the happy hour.
The happy hour.
oh, that's right. Okay. So Scott attended the 2030, last 2030 meeting. I did. Sean, I can't remember if you were there.
I was.
You were not there, okay. So 2030 is really doing a lot of work that is connected to economic development. So we listened to a consultant talk about, start the ideas of what would be the important things to improve in the business district, structurally and physical changes like street lights, sidewalks, etc. But it's still in a very early stage. I'm going to probably attend a lot of those 2030 meetings because I just found it really interesting to see how it goes. But eventually, and by eventually I think means September or October, they're going to come back with a plan from the consultant of here's what we think Woodbridge should do and here's the order that they should do it in. So that's what we're going to be following that to see, since it certainly
When do they
ties
meet?
to economic development.
So they meet on the third Tuesday, was it the Wednesday?
You know, I saw Wednesday on there.
I get the two confused.
Third Wednesday is what was on the website.
Okay.
So do you think that still is the third Wednesday then?
No.
No.
It's the third Tuesday, so it's June 21st, so it's the same day as Make Music Day.
Oh, okay.
And they just took their bus field trip today. So they visited Westville, where they spoke with the director of the Westville Renaissance Village Alliance to kind of talk about how to, once you have a place created, how to manage it. And so they're responsible for kind of making connections between if somebody wants to start a building and the director sort of knows what's vacant and would be appropriate or what's about to become vacant. She's instrumental in a lot of the events that they hold. So they're really focused on events and bringing people in to the district. So after that, they went to see Wilton and walk around Wilton. And Wilton's business district was sort of created from scratch in the 80s. So it's very interesting. It felt sort of suburban. The buildings are not all contiguous. There's a mix of on-street parking and plaza parking. But there's also street furniture. There's a lot of benches. There's lamp posts with hanging flower baskets. And it's a consistent look, so that the sidewalk has the same design with brick between the sidewalk and the road. The flowers are all the same. So it's a very consistent, manicured, intentional look, and yet it still feels suburban. And from there they went to Ridgefield, which is very, very different. I've never been to downtown Ridgefield before.
So good.
Very, very vibrant. The buildings are mostly contiguous. They also have street furniture, but it's just a very, very different vibe. It feels like you're in a city, sort of.
And everything, a movie theater, all the restaurants, a supermarket, everything is in that little hub.
Yeah, and we were there, Thursday at noon, we were there, and there were just people everywhere, walking all around, eating outside at restaurants. It was a very, very different vibe from Wilton. And from there, we went to Kent, which is sort of more intentionally rural, informal. They still have sidewalks, a lot of sort of off the main routes, kind of mini developments. And Kent was very interesting because their main street is Route 7. So like Woodbridge, it's built around a state highway. How do they manage working with a state highway that they have very little control over, yet they have a very pedestrian-friendly area? So those are the 4 places that they went and visited. So the consultant has sort of asked them to think about each of those places, what they liked and didn't like in each spot, and what they thought would be applicable to Woodbridge. So they'll be kind of diving in more deeply into that at their meeting on the 21st. And then in July, actually, is when they're hoping to have their first public meeting, where they're going to have sort of a charrette. So committee members will be each in charge of a table where they're getting feedback from the public on some of these ideas. And then the consultant will take the idea from this tour, along with the feedback from the public, to come up with something sort of like a vision board, sort of, to then get feedback and say, here's what we heard, these are the things we're thinking of, how do you feel about what we're showing you?
Great.
And that would probably be September or October, something like that.
Okay, so then a final plan might be even later than that.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
But to me, it seemed like the final plan was more about infrastructure than here's a strategy on the type of businesses that you
Absolutely.
want to bring
I think you're
in.
right.
Correct.
Right. So that the example I had was like, it's kind of like the lines are drawn, but it's not colored in.
Mhm.
Right. And that was sort of my takeaway from the meeting a bit. Like we know aesthetically what we want it to look like, right?
Mhm.
But strategically, what are the businesses that we need to attract in order
Yeah.
to drive the tax base?
And so what she has explained I think she said this to the Board of Selectmen and not to the 2030 committee, is that there's sort of 2 avenues you can go down when you're thinking about this. One is, what are the businesses that we're missing that would do well here, and how do we find them and how do we go after them? Or making the place a beautiful place where people just naturally want to be and interact, and businesses want to be there and people want to be there, and sort of having that part happen a little more naturally.
Okay.
And it doesn't really matter, from what she said, which way you go about it, or if you do both, which comes first. They're just differing theories or philosophies on how to do.
I can see that. I can see why both work.
Now,
Right.
Both
do we
approaches.
know like a Ridgefield or a Wilton, which in my mind I kind of think of them as the same thing, whereas Westville I look at as something very different. But how intentional were they?
So Wilton was very intentional. It was
Okay.
built from scratch in the 80s. Whereas Ridgefield, it feels very much like a downtown. The buildings are contiguous. They have mature street trees. So I'm not, I'm not quite so sure how intentional Ridgefield was. They also have an Adopt a Street program, which I thought was very interesting.
Mhm.
So businesses pay something into a fund that's then used to maintain the streets. So when we were in Westville, it was interesting because, we realized sort of how scrappy it
Mhm.
felt. Like it's intentionally artistic and it's a little scrappy. There's weeds coming up through all the sidewalks, right?
Right.
Whereas when we were in Wilton, it was very pristine.
When you say,
Clearly someone's
yeah,
doing
sorry,
that.
when you say created from scratch, is it like a quarry walk of 2020 that was built in the 1980s, just created out of? from
Yeah, but with
Yeah,
a
I'd
very
say,
different
yeah.
vibe. It's, it's a street, it's
Yeah.
pedestrian, it's still very car-centric,
Mhm.
but it's not a plaza. It's a street with the library, a dry cleaner,
Gotcha.
You're talking about
coffee shop.
it's like kind of just off the main road, there's a bridge, and then just
Yes.
beyond the bridge, it's
Right.
nestled in there.
And
Right, yeah.
my guess is that was an entirely new development and a new street, but it's not a development the way that Quarry Walk is.
Gotcha, gotcha. Or like in Woodbury, which is also on the state road.
Mhm.
How they have plazas and then older homes that have been turned into businesses, and they've kind of cobbled together a real
Mhm.
center of town that straddles the state road.
Mm.
Interesting.
But when you think about some of these towns, right, and that's why they were very interesting. Wilton, you know, their tax base, how much is really coming from this quaint downtown that they built versus the corporate headquarters that are there versus the homes that are there, right? So as I've thought about it, it's almost like, do you build the quaint downtown to attract that stuff, right? Like if you have, instead of looking at the business district as how much tax revenue we're going to get from the businesses that are down there versus it's almost like a trickle down type of a thing. Like if you build it, it becomes more livable and the value of everything goes up
Right.
because that's there versus trying to quantify a coffee shop, a bagel place, right? Like that, is that really going to drive it? I would imagine Wilton and Ridgefield didn't look at that as, oh, this is a tax base for us.
Right.
Right.
I mean, clearly there's some of that there,
Versus a
but it's-
quality
that's
of
not-
life enhancer.
Right.
Making the town desirable.
Right. So as we think about it, is that the right approach, right? Versus,
Well, that's our only business district, so that's the only place that we have businesses, right? So if you make it attractive,
Mhm.
hopefully more businesses will want to be there.
right.
Whereas in these other places, it's different, right? They've got the state highway, and then they have these other sort of quaint walkable areas. And we don't really have that mix, right? We have a business district.
Right. And they have corporate headquarters that are located there
Right.
that are bringing in a lot of taxes,
Right.
right?
Sure. Yes, that would be a nice thing to have. Other than 2030, is there any other communication we should think that anything happened on TPZ that's relevant for discussion or?
Not that I am aware
Okay.
of.
Okay.
The housing study was presented to the Board of Selectmen, right, and they took an action to send it to the state. And we were one of few cities and towns that submitted by the deadline. What was it, about 50% submitted by
Less
the
than, I
deadline?
think they were 81.
81 out of 169, so we were within
Well, that's
the
good
deadline.
news that we were there in the deadline.
So it's not necessarily EDC directly, but there could be development that as a result
Absolutely,
of this.
because they talked about mixed-use development.
Mhm.
So that's definitely ties into what we're doing
Yeah,
too.
so there was a list of parcels of land that weren't necessarily action items, like, oh, we definitely have to build
Right.
at this address, but there was a long list,
With
and
potential.
it gets some thought going.
Yeah. No, I thought it was, I actually listened in on the Zoom version of that.
Oh, good.
When it happened. It was interesting. And the preface to it was very clear, but here are the steps we think the town should take too. So that was clear. Yeah. Great. And how about then updates and announcements? Do we have any, or have we already covered them in our, you know,
The
make music and
diversity group has a survey out. The deadline is June 10th. That's on the town website. So they're asking for people's experiences of living in town. And the idea is that they'll be able to use the data to help them figure out where they need to be focusing their work in the coming months or years.
Is the committee going to collect that data and produce survey findings?
Yeah, so they're using the same tool that you all used when you
Right,
did
okay.
the survey. So the tool sort of creates
Yeah.
charts for you,
Mhm.
but there's actually somebody on the committee. I don't know if he's a statistician, but professionally he does surveys. So his skill set is going to be really, really useful to kind of
Right.
sift through the data and kind of suss out what it means.
Good.
But kudos to Sean for finding this platform, because we
Yes.
used it, the housing study used it, the diversity committee has used it, so
It's been very helpful.
that's great.
it was good bang for our buck.
Yeah, good stuff.
Thank you.
Great. Well, if we don't, do we have anything else, or is that
Not for
the end
me.
of our? Yeah.
Do we have any new business?
Jeremy told me that there are 2 new businesses upstairs in the office space at 245.
And 2 openings.
Yes, so I can't remember, one was, a company that works with AI, I'm not entirely sure what they do, and another one I think was a marketing firm.
Nice.
Great.
There is a new business, Deli Delish, that was the person in there bought Deli Delish, so it's got the same name. But I believe they're focusing more on catering and less on being kind of a restaurant. And I've not had a chance to speak with them yet, but I've heard there's a spa or salon moving into downstairs at 245.
Really? Oh,
Great.
nice.
Well, super. So then maybe homework is to look at the tax abatement proposal if we can for next month, and discuss that next time. Great.
And what are we next month? I just wanna make sure, because we skip August or we don't skip?
We have July, but we skip August.
Right, we have July, so July 14th.
14th is the next.
Okay.
Great. Then if that's the case, I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
All right, I'll second.
Great. All agree? Great.
Right.
Thanks very much,
Right.
everybody.
And that's at 6 o'clock, right? July 14th?
Yes.
Okay.